I'd like to thank the Academy. Thank you, Susan, my co-conspirator and collaborator on many things. And I should just mention that the Frameworks Institute just won the MacArthur Genius Award for Organization, so give her a hand. I must say, I probably more than anybody was surprised, honored, and quite moved when Liberty Hill informed me of this recognition. So for an organization full of visionaries and rabble-rousers to include me on its Upton Sinclair winners list is truly an honor and a surprise. Before I start my remarks, I want to do some quick acknowledgments so this way I don't forget and I can go home tonight. I want to thank my lovely bride, Jackie, who's been there for me all the time, the love of my life, and a real partner in this. She has to listen to me bounce these goofy ideas that come to my head, and my kids, Trey and Ariel, who are here. My 16-year-old turned to me and said, "Is this the last speech?" And my mom, Velma's here. She's coming from Florida. I'm going to say a word about her later, but thanks, Mom. I love you for coming in. So to my substantive remarks. In many ways, I'm an unlikely choice, I suspect, for this award. And this isn't me being overly modest or what the kids today call humble bragging. No, really, I'm not that important. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not an artist. You won't see me outside leading a protest or staging a sit-in. I say that because my boss, the provost of UCLA, is here, so I think I have to say that. But that's not been my style, and I certainly admire those who do that work on the front line, and we saw many great examples of that here this evening, and indeed is a through line with Liberty Hill. But me, I'm a social scientist. As Susan said, I'm an empiricist. I'm an institution builder, not an ideologue. I've worked to speak truth to power from within. Now, but what this really signifies is that there are many ways to catalyze change. Indeed, there are folks in this room who come at this from all kinds of angles, from many different ways, who try to utilize the tools at their disposal to bring about positive social change and change for justice. And indeed, nothing represents us better than Liberty Hill itself. Shane, inspirational, her great leadership, her dedicated staff, the volunteers, and I know it's the volunteers and the staff who put a dinner like this together, to many of the longtime board members. I talked to Sarah Pillsbury tonight. I'm indeed missing my great friend, Fran Jamat, who is truly a rock star, but Fran is on a long planned trip in Europe, and if you've been following her on Facebook, you'll note that she's been posting these spectacular pictures from all over the continent. But Liberty Hill's been at the forefront of social change here in Los Angeles, and it's done it through its leadership development, through its organizational capacity building, through developing frontline change leaders. And Los Angeles is a better place because of Liberty Hill. Now, I just read the sign that says, "Please do not touch the microphone." That isn't a Gilliamism, Bales. It's a literal sign here. The mission of Liberty Hill, of course, is very much in line with what we do at UCLA Luskin. We're both in the business of creating change agents. At Luskin, and I'm very proud to lead a school like Luskin. Luskin is at a great public university in a great city, and Manuel, I appreciate your bipartisan support tonight of both campuses. There is plenty of work that needs to be done that both institutions can work on. And just a quick shout out to all the Bruins in the room, nonetheless. I know that was a cheap shot. But our school, its faculty, its students, the staff, the alums, the volunteers, our donors, supporters, are all part of this idea, this mission to make a difference in this world. And we're kind of a motley crew. We're social workers and urban planners and urban designers and policy analysts, but we all believe one thing. We believe in the power to change the world. Shane, that's what you just called for. And you know, sometimes changing the world has to happen one project, one person, one place at a time. And that's indeed what we engage in. We have a faculty that works on almost all of the issues that were touched on here tonight, whether it's homelessness, foster kids, criminal justice reform, public safety, environmental justice, productive land use, transportation, infrastructure, you name it, our faculty work on it. They bring analytic rigor and scholarly sophistication to real-world problems in real time. The Luskin School engages in this intersection between beautiful theory and ugly fact. We deal in the real world. Now, sometimes, it might surprise you to discover that I get a little cynical. I work in a university. I get mired in administrative matters. The provost assigns me to committees and makes me chair them. And by the way, I thought that I'd proved I was incompetent and that I therefore shouldn't serve on the committees, till I found out that that was a criteria to make you chair of the committees. So I kind of muffed on that one, didn't I? But you know, sometimes I get a little cynical. I get a little beat down by all of this. And it seems sometimes we just can't move the needle quickly enough, or we're not making things happen fast enough. But quickly, the optimism of our students, these young people, and one of the things we're here to talk about tonight is youth activism. So I want to say a few words about what our students do. Our Luskin students are remarkable. I've talked to several people here tonight who either have our students serving in internships or working at their organizations. They're absolutely spectacular. They work with community groups here in Los Angeles, in California, and around the globe. And I just want to tell you about how they're finding solutions to some of the real pressing problems that face a society. For example, we've had a team of students working with the Texas Freedom Network on LGBT rights in that state, and that's no small job. We have another set of students who've been working with the Chumash tribe and working on education initiatives and figuring out how to improve academic performance for young people there. One of our doctoral students is working on a project I'm most interested in, interviewing young adult African-American males who've been recently released and trying to figure out how they get reintegrated into the society, get jobs, get themselves educated. We have students working on health outcomes of LGBT, Asian, and Pacific Islanders, again, a population folks don't necessarily look at. So these student leaders are change agents. In fact, a little bit in training, but they're doing it. They're on the ground doing it. And they've been helping us move, and Susan talked a little bit about this, a more dynamic and cohesive social justice agenda. Susan talked about our new institute that's coming online on inequality and democracy. We're thrilled about that. We've stolen superstar faculty member Ananya Roy from Berkeley to lead this institute. If you know her, if you can look her up, I mean, she's spectacular. And of course, when we can steal from Cal, it's always a good thing. Somebody has to reform those folks. And this institute's really going to try in a systematic way, working with scholars and activists, to really untangle this complex problem of inequality, to talk about how it plays out in institutions, how it plays out in communities, what are the best practices, what do we know from around the globe, What do we know that's working? I think in the work that many of us do, we focus on problems too much and not enough on solutions. And we heard some of them here tonight. Shane showing us the young people actually doing and accomplishing things. You know, and I know there's foundation leaders here in the room, but I often critique them because I say, you know, you make people make these big problem statements, you know, at the beginning of their proposals, and the problems are gargantuan. And then you give them $12 to sort of figure something out. And they're mired in the problem. Let's get to the solutions. Now, we expect this new institute to be a game changer, and stay tuned for that one. And as our new campaign motto goes, after all, at UCLA, we are optimists. For all this good work we're doing, still, we have farther to go. Now, my commitment to social justice was honed in a family environment in which my parents, both by words and deeds, made clear the social justice issues that confronted us, and that indeed were going to confront me and my sisters. I spoke of my mom, Velma, who's here tonight from Windermere, Florida. Mom, thanks again. Now, she was the one who really sort of turned me on to my love of politics. Michelle, you talked a little bit about how you sort of got turned on to this. And my mom was always very active. And when we lived in Canada, she was involved in local politics, helped elect the first black city council member in the city of Vancouver. She befriended African and Caribbean activists and artists and musicians who would randomly show up at our house to eat, to play instruments, to party. Sometimes we just found them there. When we were in Minnesota, I grew up and went to high school in suburban Minneapolis. She was heavily involved there. She was involved in youth organizing and youth groups, and she ran for many years. She was involved with the NAACP and the Urban League, and was a critical player in the social justice community in Minnesota. If you came to Minneapolis and you're going to work on these issues, you had to talk to her. So she really sort of instilled this love of politics and this love of social justice in me. Excuse me. And she, to this day, is still interested in justice, commitment, belief, still fighting the good fight. Well, my dad was a football player, was an All-American player at Iowa, went on, to play professionally, became the first African-American coach in Division I in the mid-'60s, the time many of you talked about. I happened to be on a university campus in those days, so I remember the anti-war movement very, very well. We were on a pretty radicalized campus, and then he went on to a very long career as one of the first African-American executives in the NFL. And I too thought about a career in football. I went to college on a football scholarship, and my desire to become an academic occurred in Boulder, Colorado, in a game where, thank you, after having the game of my life, their coach said, if this guy's doing this, you guys are in a lot of trouble. They came out in the second half, broke my ribs, and at that time I decided, the GRE's, good idea. So that's how my academic life started. Now, my mom and dad are true inspirations, and why they may not think of themselves as change agents, they are, and they certainly instilled these values in me. For all of the great accomplishments, however, of their lifetime, we still have farther to go. Now, I've been working and researching racial equity issues for the last 35 years or so, and have been here in the last several years very much interested in the issue of inequality. As you know, it's been a subject of a great deal of commentary by pundits and academics, especially lately. But the problem of inequality has been with us for a long time. A lot of the things that were mentioned here tonight have been with us for a long time, and particularly when it comes to our youth of color. Now, I don't know if anybody saw in The Nation here recently, a reprint of a James Baldwin piece he wrote in 1965. It was a special issue, and it was called A Report from Occupied Territory. And he writes about the relationship of Harlem in the middle 60s and the relationship of that community to the police. And Harlem is the occupied territory he refers to in the title. And he says this: "My report is a plea for the recognition of our common humanity. Without this recognition, our common humanity will be proved in unutterable ways. My report is also based on what I myself know, for I was born in Harlem and raised there. Neither I nor my family can be said ever really to have left. This means that I also know in my own flesh, and know, which is worse, in the scars borne by many of those dearest to me, the thunder and fire of the billy club, the paralyzing shock of spittle in the face. And I know what it is to find oneself blinded, on one's knees, handcuffed at the bottom of the flight of steps down which one has just been hurled." This is Baldwin writing in the mid-60s, all right? I had the privilege of meeting Baldwin in the mid-80s. Last couple of years of his life. I was a young professor at Wisconsin and was on a panel with him, and his body was weary and his hands were wrinkled, but his mind, that mind was as sharp as it ever was. And he talked to us about our obligations to our students and to our community. And he reminded us that the fight had just begun, that we hadn't really won anything, that this was just the opening salvo. And it would require vigilance and courage to move forward. And I think Shane really started to get at this in her remarks. And this is all the more poignant, and particularly given what's going on today. The violence and injustice and oppression that continue to rear its ugliness in this country. And the places tick off like a list of horrors. It's Ferguson, it's North Charleston, it's Jennings, it's University of Oklahoma, it's San Francisco, and yes, it's even Los Angeles, again and again and again and again. And Baldwin reminds us of this. He does it in eloquent, painful, beautiful prose. And what he says to me is, we have farther to go. Now, I'm heartened, for all my cynicism and concern, that inspired organizations like Liberty Hill are working on issues specifically related to young people of color. They're not throwing these generations of young people away. They've been partnering with foundations like the Endowment on the Sons and Brothers Initiative, one I've been working on also, as I've been trying to help them fashion a communications framework for this work, and hopefully some of that will come to light soon. And with Liberty Hill, I've been working toward a process for the organization and its board to understand how to communicate social justice issues. And Susan talked a bit about this. How to communicate a progressive agenda. What is a message that will resonate and transform? And much of what I have to say, I guess, I don't know, the last few years here, I've been asked to speak to the board, grounded in social science research and communications research and practice, probably challenge many of the preconceived notions about how to communicate a social justice agenda that I think many of the board members held. I think they found what I had to say challenging and provocative, but they weren't unresponsive. They welcomed that challenge. They wanted to hear more. They wanted their thinking to be pushed, and I admired that about them, because they could have easily become defensive. Right? And Susan mentioned a bit of it here, and I'm going to mention some more of it. But I think all of us continue to observe. We still have farther to go. Now, I want to end this by saying I'm very proud to be an Upton Sinclair Award winner tonight. I'm, again, quite shocked and surprised that I actually got this award, but that's just a humble brag. And I am awed a bit, though, to be in Michelle's company. She's an alum, which I like a great deal. She's been a senior fellow at Luskin. She's taught at Luskin. So it's a particular privilege for me to be honored with her this evening. And Michelle, the work you've done is inspiring, and the work that you will continue to do will inspire us all. And I know our students who've interacted with you have been all the better for it. In May 1923 at Liberty Hill in San Pedro, Upton Sinclair spoke on behalf of thousands of striking longshoremen on their right to organize. And in the social justice and labor movement here in LA, that was considered a very, very pivotal moment. Well, I've taken another approach. I've tried to work my entire life to change, to create change from within, to push large institutions towards social justice in ways sometimes that has been uncomfortable. But what connects all of us, what connects Liberty Hill, UCLA Luskin, Upton Sinclair, and all of you here tonight is our shared belief in ensuring that our most vulnerable communities, our most vulnerable citizens have a voice in the public debates. This is a great honor. I want to thank Liberty Hill for this. And thanks for my friends. I have contingents from all over the region who've come tonight. I have a sailing partner with me who we challenge anybody in the room to a race. I must say I am the worst crewman of all time, but nonetheless, I'm still here. But I really do appreciate all the friends and family and colleagues and collaborators who've come out tonight. And I want to end with another James Baldwin quote. Baldwin said, "I'm not interested in anybody's guilt. Guilt is a luxury that we can no longer afford. I know you didn't do it, and I didn't do it either. But I am responsible for it because I am a man and a citizen of this country. And you are responsible for it for the very same reason." So to Baldwin, I say, I hear you, and indeed, we have farther to go. Thank you.
The show isn't over yet. Please join us for a dessert reception. You can meet a few of the leaders, talk to one another, and fill out more pledge cards. Whatever makes you happy. Good night.